Let's take a look at the Empire, man, and how they're doing a year and a bit later. Now, this was the most requested series I get back to recording. I can't believe how many requests I had to get back to recording these 1 year later kind of like review videos. And we are going to do the not the Arcane Journals, the Legacy factions as well. But just to explain why there's been a bit of a gap between this one and the last one I recorded, which was, I think, almost 2 months ago. As Mountain Miniatures being a primary battle report channel, I have to focus on the battle reports with my time first, which means I do a lot of painting. Now, I do have 2 painters working for me, not full time, but like they always have a project on the go. But even with 2 people painting for Mountain Miniatures, I still have to dedicate a great deal of my time to painting. So just to explain why this video took so long to come out, I personally, since the last video went out, the last 1 year later video went out, and this very moment right now, I personally painted 28 new plastic swordsmen. We got a high elf character on a griffin. We have a couple of chieftains, one with a special BSB conversion. I found an old Eltharion the Blind model in my bits box. I also painted Grecia's Goldtooth for a battle report. A Shia Vess, a couple of giveaway models, Archeon, a Beast Lord, Ogre Dude. But most of the stuff I painted was actually for the Empire. Now, there was the Merworm and a Seaguard BSB, 2 units of 6 Knights Panther. I also painted up 12 Inner Circle Knights Panther, 2 Empire War Wagons. I finally got some Empire Archers painted up. I got Harold Jemison himself painted up. I converted up a Knight character on Pegasus for my Empire army. We also have like the Knights Panther special character. Got him done. I got like 8 Knights Panther Demigriffs converted and painted up. A big old squad of Militia. I converted up my own Warrior Priest as well to be mounted on a horse. So these are models I personally painted in the last 2 months, delaying my actual recording of this series. That being said, let's actually look at the Empire and how do I feel about them 1 year later. Empire was one of the armies that at first I think many people poo-pooed on. They weren't quite the same as they were in, well, I mean, the most recent version of the Empire I was playing before the old world dropped was the Warhammer Armies Project, and they were very strong in the Armies Project. They weren't considered top tier at 8th edition, but I thought they played okay. Nowadays, they still play actually very similar to the way they played in the past, right? So we got every possible playstyle you want. You can go Knights, you can go Infantry. Give me a second. Lots of War Machine and kind of semi-monster type lists. But our characters, the Empire characters, in a game that is currently a Toughness 6 Wizard or Death Star type meta, Empire doesn't do well, particularly in any of those. However, they do the gun line, I think, better than anybody else. I think it's a very viable way to play. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm going to talk how much I love the gun line and how I rarely play it because it's typically not fun to play against for my opponent, so I don't do that often. But there are several playstyles. Actually, Empire is one of the armies I just enjoy the most. I've enjoyed pure cav armies since the beginning of the edition. Now, we did get a little extra cav support with an Arcane Journal, but that is something that I'm not overly impressed with. But you know what? Give me a second. I'll get to that. So our characters are cheaper than your counterparts for the most part, but also weaker stats. Like our General of the Empire, our biggest, baddest, well, I want to say our second biggest, baddest fighter, he's got weapon skill on par with everybody else's hero level characters. So a character like one step down from our top tier leaders. So only weapon skill 5, only 3 attacks. He's not a fighter. Now, this is the guy that you can put on a big old Imperial Griffin, which I think is not a terrible mount at all. I think it does okay. It's relatively cheap. You can have a nice 3-up armor save, 5-up ward save character on a flying monster for under 300 points, which is not, like, honestly, it's a budget character. It's not going to mop the floor with enemy dragons and whatnot, but it will strip off the last couple of wounds from that dragon after your cannons, took them to town. So our characters, they They don't hero hammer as well as some other armies, but that's okay. You don't have to be the best at everything. The wizards, I'm very happy with. I like mine in the Pegasus often. These guys have MR1 built in, toughness 4, relatively cheap, can take most lores. Not real restrictions on how many you can have in your army, so Empire Wizards are another one of the big boons of the army. Now, the playstyle for me is this Wizards, Cannons, Knights, always been my favorite, because unfortunately, in my opinion, and I know probably many of you agree, we're going to scroll down, just keep scrolling. Empire State Troop. This is the one thing I haven't been, I was going to say overly impressed with this edition, but I think it's worse than that. This is the one unit, I think, in the entire game of Warhammer the Old World that I just don't like. Now, Empire Man is one of my favorite armies this edition. I do not think they're bad at all. I want to be very clear about that before I get misunderstood. I do think they have the worst unit in the game. But the worst unit in the game could mean several things. This is, for me, a very uninteresting unit. It can play the game, but it doesn't have any special rules. It doesn't have any interesting stats or equipment combinations, or it's just a very boring unit. In a game of Warhammer, in an edition of Warhammer, where I actually enjoy getting my blocks of infantry into combat, which is something, if you watch me historically, is always kind of a thing I shied away from. I've been more of a Magic player since the days of old. I've always liked Cav. And I try to always avoid combat until I had no choice and had to go in. That was always my playstyle in Warhammer Fantasy. However, in the old world, I actually really enjoy getting into combat, getting in the thick of things for the fallback and order mechanic. You never know how things are going to end up or how your units are going to be positioned after one round of combat. Now, that being said, I don't think the Empire State Troop is at all fun to throw into combat whenever. Like, you can use them as... I was going to say use them as, like, kind of anvils and hold up your enemy, but they're a little expensive to do that. And I think the real nail in the coffin for the Empire State Troop is the fact that the rules Horde and Warband exist. These rules were meant to represent the untrained rabble of other armies. And those rules had made units like goblins, Bretonnian peasants, Skaven, clan rats, all these really crappy units so much more effective on the battlefield than the professionally trained soldier that is the Empire State Troop, which is unfortunate. So it's just the Empire State Troop is missing something, lacking something in rules and viability in the game system that many people will argue does not favor infantry. I understand the argument. I kind of agree. But at the same time, I actually do think infantry plays the game well enough to the point where myself and I think everybody in my area, we often use lots of regular blocks of infantry. In fact, I starting to believe that there are far more people out there, or starting to understand that there are far more people out there playing with infantry, far more than you would expect if you get all your information off of like Facebook or Reddit or just the internet in general. I think far more people are playing with infantry than we would expect. It's just the Empire State Troop is the one lackluster thing in the book that I'm not happy with. The Free Company Militia is a unit I haven't actually had a chance to play around with personally yet. I literally just got mine painted up. I am excited to try these out. They have Impetuous, which I've said this numerous times. I want to control my units, but I don't mind Impetuous on infantry. Typically this unit is probably going to want to charge when it has to charge. Impetuous, I don't mind on infantry. Now, this squad here literally has Warband and Horde. I much rather spend my points on the Militia than Empire State Troop, and that's very sad, even though I do love the Militia models. And the Empire Archers, I finally got mine done. Well, finally got in stock, right? So I bought them up right away, got them painted. Also, these Empire Archers can do the job you want your State Troops to do, redirect or block, but yeah, the State Troops can't fight, neither can the Archers, but at least the Archers are going to be significantly cheaper and far more mobile. Now, the Empire Greatsword, is this a unit that can bring back glory to the infantry of the Empire? Unfortunately, no. So I don't know how many of you agree with me on this, but when I think of the Empire, man, is just blocks of infantry holding the line as cannons are shooting downfield. That's how I envision an Empire army. So as a kid, that's why I saw an Empire army. Nowadays, it seems to be cannons and knights. But the Great Sword, I mean, it's not the cheapest model. It's 11 points. That's not terrible. But, I mean, with a great weapon, this thing is strength 5, toughness 3, 4 up armor save. They got stubborn built in, which is pretty good, but that's it. Having veteran at 1 point per model, again, 1 point per model for veteran, not terrible. But I mean, now we're at 12 points a model. I want to have drilled on this unit. Now we're at 14 points a model, and no, and now we've just priced them out of use. I think unfortunately, the Empire Greatsword, an awesome model, doesn't see a lot of play or a lot of value in your typical army. You could bring it and not feel bad, but we got the Totugan Guard and the Arcane Journal. This unit does the same job, but it's better in almost every way. Okay, we're 13 points base, so we're already more expensive. We're toughness 4 base. I really like toughness 4. You can spend 1 point per model to gain the Guardians of the Temple special rule. You gain the ability to reroll hits of 1. That to me is worth 1 point, but we're at 14 points a model, kind of expensive. Drilled is built in. Wait, that's not too dissimilar from Great Swords and points, but these guys are toughness 4. Now, these guys have a Wolf Hammer. It's only +1 strength in AP2, but it's not strikes last. So, -1 strength over the Great Sword, +1 toughness over the Great Sword. Not strikes last. Pretty good, but when they charge, they get at least 3 inches or more. They get +2 to the strength of that weapon, which is as, good as that Great Sword. Stubborn veteran built in. Stubborn veteran drilled built in. I think this squad, the Totugan Guard, have made the Empire Greatsword kind of irrelevant, which is cool because they're awesome models, but it's unfortunate they make great swords irrelevant. In fact, like if anybody ever wanted to use their great swords, their Empire Greatswords as Totugan Guard, I'm like, go ahead and do it. Like, you're paying for rules, you might as well use better rules. I love that we have flagellants. They are rare and they fight desperately for rare slots. If I can make an army of flagellants, steam tanks, and Hellblaster volley guns, all these things are rare, that would be a fantastic army, but you have to pick and choose. I find my flagellants, even though often very effective in every game I play, I'd rather spend those points on cannons and Hellblaster volley guns. Having unbreakable infantry, even though at a hefty 13 points per model, is good. Now, Unbreakable isn't as good in the old world as that is in other editions, because with the fall back in good order mechanic, you fall back in good order far more than you flee these days. However, knowing that the flagellants can be a bit of an anchor to the point where they're not going to stubborn or fall back in good order and kind of like throw off your positioning. Because like you can get stubborn on several units in this game. Stubborn, you're not going to die. But when you use your stubborn, you're usually pulling yourself into a position that obviously is not where you want to be, but it's not always being a bad position, but stubborn can wind you up in a bad position. In fact, I've lost in a recent game, I've lost several white lions because they weren't getting killed in combat. They used stubborn. They fell back and get order, and the angle they went through, they had to like run through I think it was 3 enemy units, and I lost like half the unit from perils checks. So I mean, that's a very like out there edge case scenario, but having that Unbreakable every now and then, I kind of dig it. I still love my flagellants. Pistoliers are a unit that I've always loved with the Empire, but they are impetuous on skirmish cav, which has made them effectively, in my opinion, useless. I never ever want to bring Pistoliers. I think bringing Pistoliers it's not even toning your list down by bringing Pistoliers. It's actively helping your opponent more often than not. So with restraint and reforms and overruns and the way they work in this edition, if your Pistoliers, let me rephrase that. When your Pistoliers charge something that you don't want them to charge, they're gonna lose combat, and you've given your opponent a free reform or even an extra move for overrun and reform or whatever. Just allowing them to reform or change the direction of one of their units just before they take their turn. So Pistoliers are actively bad for your army. Don't do it. But the Arcane Journal came out and gave us Road Wardens, marginally more expensive. I think they're like 1 point more expensive after you do all the adjustments. This is how you use your Pistoliers now. You take Road Wardens, you give them pistols, and they do all the job that Pistoliers used to do way back when. I love the addition of Road Wardens. It's just everything you want a redirector to do for you, but most importantly, a rule that I find doesn't get enough talk. They get or can purchase Feigned Flight. Feigned Flight is such an amazing rule where, I mean, you just position your Road Wardens in just a way to take a charge. You immediately flee from the charge, automatically rally. More often than not, they are safe and don't get caught, but even if they get caught, they rally, so they're not immediately dead. Road Wardens or any unit with Feigned Flight is just so perfect for kiting anything with Frenzy around the table. Now, my regular opponent, Luca, loves his Frenzy. He loves his Khorne units. I almost find taking Road Wardens against Khorne units to be not fair, or any fast-moving unit with Feigned Flight. A year round, I find that the Demigryph is one of my favorite units in the book, but I struggle to get this in many of my lists. So I think for a Swift Stride, Toughness 4, Monstrous Cav, 3 AP2 Strength 5 attacks on the mount, Strength 6 Lance on the charge, 2 up armor save, Monstrous Cav, this is a fantastic unit. You put this unit in every other army, it's going to be like an auto include. You have this in Bretonnia, it'll be auto include. You have this in Empire, it'll be auto Empire. High Elves will be auto include. Everyone wants a unit like this. The weird spot I find them in for Empire is I struggle to get them in a list that's not a theme list. So when if I'm gonna play an Empire army that's a gunline, but gunline light, so I want to make sure I have some combat units, I'm gonna use a couple units of Knightly Orders as my core, and then I'll spend my special and rare points as war machines and stuff. So I can't really spend points on Demigryphs. A very good and effective and points appropriate, arguably maybe even points to a cheap unit, but you know, they're a good point cost. They don't fit into the play style of the way I'm playing Empire currently. Well, that might be not fair. It's not that they only don't fit in the play style. They're in special and they're expensive. Like, they're going to eat up a lot. A unit of 4s eat up about 300 points, which is an effective way of spending 300 points, but it's still 300 points out of your list after you got a couple, maybe got your wizards, maybe I got my captain on a griffin, I got my war machines, I spent maybe 300 points on cannons, 100 or 200 points maybe on a steam tank or volley guns. Like, all these little things that are cheap are adding up. So the Demigryph, I find, gets cut out of my list far too often, even though I find, man, I love the stats and everything about the Demigryph. Often when I do end up putting it in my list, or a unit of them in my list, I'll throw a unit of 4 of them off on one of my flanks and just let them play by themselves. They need no support. They can fight most anything. They're fine on their own. I remember way back at the beginning of the edition a year ago, there was a lot of criticism for the War Altar. I think a lot of Empire players read these rules and did not like them. After playing it often, I think, I use the War Altar probably in more of my Empire games than not. I really do love the War Altar as my general. Having that 18-inch aura of -2 to cast, I don't care if my wizard's in that aura, I'll take the -2 to cast as well, because it's friend or foe. But I've had games where with a level 2 wizard and then a magic item that makes him dispel level 3 and a War Altar, I was able to shut down, I think, like, I want to say 100%, but maybe not, but damn near most of my enemy spellcasting. I think it's a good model, and it's a heavy chariot. I often give it the Ruby Ring of Ruin, large target, 360-degree line of sight, little buff mechanic, which I always feel the leadership mechanic on it. A buff mechanic with my Ruby Ring has the ability to fight okay in combat, impact attacks, toughness 5, a couple of strength 6 attacks from a great weapon, priest on top. I actually really love the War Altar. I don't know, let me know if you agree with me on that one. I really enjoy the War Altar. And you Empire players, are you disliking it still? I don't want to say it's an auto-include for me, but I use the War Altar far more than I don't. Same with the Steam Tank. It's another model that I struggle to squeeze into my list often. It's expensive at 265 points. You can bring 1 per 1,000. It's just a stupidly point cost item or unit. It should be 250 points. You should be able to bring 2 of these in a 2,000 point game. But the rare point allotment disallows you to bring 2 of these, which is okay. Having 2 on the table, maybe you find that cheesy and you don't want to see that. I was more thinking about the fact that the Empire Battalion came with a steam tank in it and some infantry. There's not even value of buying 2 of those battalions to build your army. I think that's my biggest criticism for the Empire steam tank. The fact that it's 265 points, you can't have 2 in rare, and it comes in the battalion. That's it. Like, yeah, it's tough to 7. It's got 3 up armor save. It's got 10 wounds. It's got a cannon. It's got a steam gun. It can have pigeon bombs. It's very powerful, and maybe it would be unfun for a lot of people, especially newer players, to have to deal with 2 of these. So there's that. I mean, this thing is thick and unbreakable, right? City state of Nuln. We can't bring our level 4 wizards. Well, we get some buffs. I think you can make a very good gun line. I keep going back and forth in my head of which army can make the better gun line, the city state of Nuln or regular Grand Army. Now, the city state of Nuln takes the Empire War Wagon, which is a fantastic miniature, and makes it special instead of rare for the Empire. So an already very coveted spot. So you get more of these war wagons if you're playing Nuln, but you have to bring a unit of halberdiers. You're playing the Nuln city state, and you can't have a level 4. For those 2 reasons, I think Nuln is very fun and is not by any means weak. Not by any means weak. And I played it numerous times already. I think it's very fun. I think you can make a better gun line with just Grand Army, because you can bring level 4s instead of level 2s. Empire War Wagons, you just, if you really want to squeeze them into your list, you put engineers on them, because they can be a mount for an engineer, keep them as character points, or you can probably find some points to spare there. And yeah, no, I just think you'll probably end up doing better just because of the wizards alone. That being said, having core outriders, which the city state of Nuln allows you to do, pretty sweet. Having them be able to move and only take -1 to hit instead of -2, also pretty sweet. But core makes or breaks most armies, right? Empire Grand Army, you can make your core Empire Knights and Archers, and you're solid. Those work very well with your gun line. When things get too close to your gun line, you send the War Wagons after them, and you send the Knights after them, and you use your level 4 Wizard of Illusion to stop them from charging. So a gun line's better by playing not the gun or the black powder focused state, the city state of Nuln, which is weird, but that's fine. We don't always want to make the most effective gun line, because it is not always fun for an opponent to play against that. So yeah, city state of Nuln, very fun, but not the most powerful way of playing a gun line. But that's okay. As I said 3 times now. The Knightly Orders. So this one, I kind of regret my original review or my first impressions about them, because this upsets me a little bit after a lot of playing and reflecting. In a game where it is very common to see a lot of toughness 6 and wizards, even in very casual games, if I walk up to the store where the people are playing all the time, I'm going to see very friendly lists way more often than not. In fact, like I almost never see a good cutthroat list up there. And you're still going to see wizards and toughness 6. You may only see 1 or 2 pieces of toughness 6. You're not going to see 4, 5, or 6 at all. But you're still going to see a toughness 6 model on the table or 2. And wizards for sure. The Empire Knightly Order Army of Infamy struggles to deal with those 2 things. Now, when I was reviewing the individual Knightly Orders, I kind of glossed over one of them. It was the Knights of the Blazing Sun. I shouldn't have glossed over that one. They can bring cannons, which is actually very helpful. That Knightly Order has a tool to deal with the toughness 6. Whereas Knights Panther, for example, they can't take wizards and they can't take cannons or anything to deal with big monsters. Now, I've had recent success with demigryphs against monsters, but Knights Panther hate chaos, and the monsters I was playing with my Knights Panther were fighting chaos monsters. So rerolling those hits were super helpful. That being said, you don't have anything reliable to pull down monsters and no spell defense whatsoever, which is unfortunate, because you have to have those things to play the game this edition. And the game is this edition is very hero hammery. The most effective character you can bring with the Knightly Orders is a Grand Master on a horse or a demigryph, whatever, and there isn't even magic items that you can take from the Arcane Journal or even the Empire as a whole to make this guy a real beefy character. The most effective character you can bring has the Ogre Blade and a 5 aboard save. And in addition of Hero Hammer. The Grand Master can't Hero Hammer. Or you can take a Grand Master, give him the Ogre Blade, a 5 aboard save, throw him on a Pegasus and charge a monster. Only 4 attacks. You can absolutely kill that monster. On average, you won't. And then you will die. So, yeah, Knightly Orders really struggle to handle big toughness 6 monsters, which is unfortunate. Because I love the idea of the Knightly Orders. In fact, I think the Arcane Journals, I said this numerous times, I'll say it again, Arcane Journals should make me want to go out and buy more miniatures and paint up models. And the Knightly Order thing came out, and I bought 2,000 points of Knights, converted them all, even the demigryphs, to be Knights Panther. And I have my Knights Panther army of infamy, which I have a lot of fun playing. But often I tell my opponent, hey, I'm playing Knights Panther or whatever, and maybe don't bring 2 level 4s and 3, what are those monsters called that are way too cheap? Giant Spawn. Took me a second. Yeah, so yeah, just if you bring a lot of toughness 6, a lot of wizards against Knightly Orders, you're going to have a bad time, which is unfortunate because I do really like the Empire, but I rely on my cannons too much in my war machines. I am not upset with the Empire army as a whole at all this edition. I think the cries at first, well, I think most people said their army was really bad at first because objectively, when we're first looking at all these armies a year ago, everything is toned down from what we've seen in, if you were coming off the Warhammer Army Project or even Warhammer 8th edition, everything is pulled down a bit, which to me turned into a much better game. Now, you could argue that we've lost a bit of flavor for all these armies, but that can always come back in the future. We have a new baseline here. I'm excited for the next iteration of the Empire and what they could be. But yeah, Empire have become, I was just say one of my favorites. I want to narrow down. I think Empire have become one of my top 3 favorite armies this edition. Thanks for watching. There will be more. Happy wargaming.